Let's pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So, full disclosure, today's sermon is on the shorter side because, as I mentioned, Lindsay is off at this retreat with a dozen or more other people from the congregation, and when I was writing it, I thought there was a significant chance that I'd be holding a small, squirmy baby throughout the entirety of today's worship, including the sermon, and who knows what could happen with screaming or crying or squirming or what have you, and so I thought it best just to keep things a little bit on the shorter side, and then of course, by some miracle, he is supposedly joyfully enjoying time in the nursery with folks instead. So, but nevertheless, here we are. But it's not a bad Sunday for a shorter sermon, I think, because these texts are ones that are so rich with message. The texts are some that almost preach themselves. They have such depth of teaching. I mean, we've got some of the classic slam dunk A-list Jesus sayings today, right? You are salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Hide it under a bushel. No. Let your light so shine before others that they might see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. It's the verse we read at every baptism, right? We have the baptism stuff, and then we light the candle, and we hand the candle and say, let your light so shine. They might see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. It's classic Jesus. And yet, what is it that Jesus is really trying to communicate today? What does it mean to let our light shine before others? And before we focus on that, I wanted to think for a minute about what I don't think it means. Because Jesus isn't talking about just publicly performing the components of Christianity. He's not just saying that we need to do showy things in public so that other people take notice. This message of letting our light shine isn't about flashy demonstrations and performative religion. The call is deeper than that, and it's important for us because we see, I think, so much performance in our world today, starting at the politics of our world, which seem to permeate everything, right? I don't know if things were different 20 years ago, or if I was just younger 20 years ago and didn't realize this is how it was, but it does seem more and more in my life that politics are ever present. They're always being talked about. They're always on the TV. They're always in our heads. And they become so important to us, and they become so important to our identities, and they dominate our conversations and seemingly our whole lives, and that might be okay if it was more about politics instead of performing things. If we spend our time and energy on politics because our leaders were so focused on getting real and meaningful work done, or if we were spending time on politics because we were committed to having conversation with people who we don't agree with and trying to find middle ground and places of connection, but that's not normally what I see, especially when I turn on my TV. I see 24-hour onslaught of performative politics, the kind where getting good sound bites and retweets seems to be the whole objective, where accomplishing meaningful work isn't as important as appearing to stand for the right things, or ripping up a piece of paper, or questioning the authenticity of somebody's prayers passes as being productive in some way, or the goal isn't accomplishing meaningful and effective legislation so much as it is to enliven the people who agree with me and anger the people who don't. But nothing actually gets done. This is not what it means to be the light of the world. And it's not just something we see in politics. I think these sort of performances exist throughout our lives, certainly in the TV shows we watch, which literally are performances, right? We're presented with reality TV that is anything but real, or TV shows and movies that present idyllic versions of life masquerading as truth. We see it in our social media feeds where everyone's trying to show the best sides of themselves, presenting the masks that we wear. We see it in every aspect of our lives, where posturing and pretending take priority over being grounded and authentic. That's not what it means to be the light of the world. What it does mean is maybe best spelled out in our Isaiah text that Trottle read for us today, because the text starts by naming that the people have been living a performative religion. They ask of God righteous judgments, and they say they delight to draw near to God, and they ask God, why do we fast but you don't see? Why do we humble ourselves but you don't notice? But look, they serve their own interest on their fast day and oppress all their workers. Look, they fast only to quarrel and to fight and to strike with a wicked fist. Such fasting as they do today will not make their voice heard on high. They perform religion, but they don't live it. And that's not what God is looking for. God says what God is looking for in the next verses. God says, is this not the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free and to break every yoke. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them and not to hide yourself from your own kin. It's not about appearing to be in favor of the right things. It's not about empty gestures and hollow rituals. It's not about going to the right church or performing religion in the right ways. It's loosing the bonds of injustice, undoing the thongs of the yoke, letting the oppressed go free, breaking every yoke, sharing your bread with the hungry, bringing the homeless poor into your house, covering the naked, and being present with your own kin. Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil, if you offer your food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness. These are the words that our God speaks to us. This is the call that Jesus gives to us, that our light might rise in the darkness, that our light might break forth like the dawn, that our light might shine before others, that they might see our good works and glorify our Father in heaven. Because we are called to be light of the world, to feed the poor and hungry and break the bonds of injustice, and to do it in real and meaningful ways. This is what it means to be disciples of Christ. This is what it means to be the light of the world. Thanks be to God. Amen.